So I'm Talia McAllister. I'll be moderating. I'm CPO for a nonprofit called Products. We focus on sustainability education and are working in the Lidkin neighborhood of East Fort Worth. That I'm told I gotta hold the mic up. Sorry, guys. So let's go ahead and get started with introductions. Do you want me to introduce you? Guys want to introduce yourselves? There's one. Perfect.
No.
I know. All right. So starting at the far end here, we've got Andrew Brinker. Andrew is a Fort Worth ISD science teacher with the early college at Tarrant County College. He is a biology professor. His work in aquatic ecology and biodiversity help protect the Trinity watershed and ensure clean water for future generations. Good. Then we've got John Stevenson. John is vice chair of Streams and Valleys and a civic leader with decades of experience in water planning, urban development, and community restoration. Most recently through his work with Projects Group on the Fred Rouse Center. Very proud of that. And then this lovely individual to my left is Martha Whitehouse. Full disclaimer, Martha is the board chair for economics, so we work together quite a lot. She is a Native Plant Society of Texas certified landscape professional, a member of their Speakers Bureau, and a published gardening journalist. She is also, as I mentioned, our board chair and has been helping us through a transitional time as we have reimagined our weather. So welcome, guys. So just starting with the big picture, what kind of environmental shifts are you seeing in each of your fields in the land? And what kind of practical steps can Fort Worth take to strengthen its resilience?
Am I going first because I have this microphone? Okay. It was in my chair, to be fair. Well, in my work, and I'm going to speak mostly from the standpoint of the Native Plant Society, the biggest shift we've seen is obviously climate change. Climate change is real. Climate change is serious. And so we've had some more extremes in weather. And as far as what Fort Worth can do, they can start thinking about the issues of climate change and apply what needs to be done at every level. Because while there are some laws, like by the state, for example, I'll give you a quick example, for HOAs, Texas State Code 202.007, makes it that HOAs cannot forbid xeriscape landscaping, right? Native plants and things like that. But there's a lot of kind of loopholes in there where they can still require that the grass doesn't look a certain way, you don't use certain native grasses. So there's things there that could be changed with city policies that would fill in kind of the gap left in some of the policies like that. And just general education and awareness of people about what the challenges are.
Thank you very much, and it's great to be up here. I'm a big fan of Sir Fort Worth. I went through the keyboards program a little while ago, so just thank you all for making time on a Saturday to be here and to listen to these two folks, and also me. Sorry for that. But I think it's, just putting it lightly, it's been a really wild 8 months at the federal level and how that sort of transcended down from there. And I think we're seeing some interesting ways that plays here locally. So yesterday, I don't know if anyone saw it, but the federal government stopped a wind project that was already 65% complete. It's a $4 billion project. This is not some tiny little thing, and just decided to stop it right in the middle of its tracks. At the same time, yesterday afternoon, the Good Natured program announced, that's a program here locally, announced their project registration system. So this is a way that folks here locally can celebrate projects that are operating in accordance with this idea of being good natured. That's understanding how that project fits into the various environments here in Fort Worth. And so you see locally, we're trying to do what we can to operate in a forward-thinking, responsible way, even if we're seeing perhaps some shifts at the federal level. And I know we'll get into that more, but I think it's important to recognize that there are some wide differences between what can happen at the federal level versus what's happening here locally.
First of all, thank you, Steer Fort Worth, for having me. Thank you, Tali, Martha, and John for being on this panel. When I think of recent shifts, and this is from an educator's lens, but I think about cell phones. I think about the disconnected nature that we have now. That's much more so because I'm as guilty as the students are. I'm addicted to my phone. So I think as an educator, one of the things that we need to do, and just a potential fix for that, is to try and get the students out more. So as an example, this week I had students, I'm at the TCC Trinity River campus, so I'm lucky I can take the students right to the river. So one day this week we went with dip nets and tried to collect things for this lab we have. It's called an eco column, which is made out of 2-liter bottles. It's got an aquatic chamber, terrestrial, decomposition, and predator. And then they learn basic soil and water testing for the next 4 weeks. So yesterday we were outside. We had to schedule fire drills. So I wanted to make the most of it, go outside for a drill. I tell them just to go around and see if you can find like some roly polies or some cool things to add to the eco column that will also function in the ecosystem. They were really struggling with it. So I managed to find it from the TCC River, Trinity River campus. Beautiful. But I know a secret, a trick. So if you look at those irrigation boxes where the valves are, they have a different little microclimate, so that's where you want to check. So I was showing the students, and sure enough, we managed to find, I think we caught in total 5 chirping frogs and a cool little ground skink. And these chirping frogs, by the way, you've probably all heard about at some point or another. Oftentimes on social media like Facebook or Instagram or something, you see people complaining about this little chirping under their house, and they have no idea what it is. They're accusing some innocent insect of it or a bird or whatnot. In reality, it's this little frog. So I'm going to play the call for you real quick just so you can hear it, so you know what I'm talking about.
We stopped playing at the insects.
I hope so.
Just let's what
Kevin.
I prefer that, Dominic.
So if you've heard that before, please raise your hand. Did you know it was a frog? Keep your hand raised. All right. So
That's interesting.
it is really cool.
I would have definitely thought the opposite inside.
Yeah.
And I'm going to even be able to show you guys ones that brought them.
Shut up.
They're teeny tiny.
Oh.
So here is the culprit, the little chirping frog. So I'm going to hand this to him. Pass it around. Check out the frog.
See, so for those of you that aren't here in person, you're really missing out. Yeah.
But the students will remember the frog. Actually remember, they're not going to remember what I teach them about, the inner mitochondrial membrane. So that's where I think we can really add and change and reconnect the students to the environment, is having them. I think every student in Fort Worth should be going to the Trinity River at least 2 or 3 times between kindergarten and 12th grade. I think that connection would go a long ways to making environmental stewards for the future.
So you make a really interesting point, and I'm wondering, thinking about that connection with nature, do you see the same issue at the adult level as well, or with your college-age students?
Without a doubt, I'm sure the other panelists could say the same thing. But for example, most people, maybe even in this room, wouldn't know that the tap water we get is coming from 90 miles away. It's being pumped here. It's not coming out of Eagle Mountain or any of these Clutter Lake where it's draining these close reservoirs. Anyone else want to speak?
Big shoes. Joe never shared it.
I
did watch it.
Let's jump on it. No, I just wanted to talk about the adult education part of this, because above all, I'm a gardener, and I think everyone should be gardening. They should be working outside with their fingers in the dirt, because it's actually good for you physically, not just doing exercise, but because getting dirt under your fingernails actually improves your gut biome. There's studies supporting that. So I think more people need to be connected to the earth, and that's part of what we do for economics, is to get that education out there that this is what you're doing. What I'd like to start is a movement called Stop Working Out and Start Working Outside. Great. Stop all that pumping iron, pump a shovel. It
is a very good workout.
It's a great workout. It's good for you, and you end up with a beautiful garden to look at. So, yeah, that's what I'm saying up with him.
I think I'm probably the only one up here that's not actually an educator in some way, but I think one of the things I've recognized as a parent is if my daughters come to me and tell me, hey, this is a better way to do things, stop keeping the sink running while you're doing the dishes, things like that. That's how you also involve the adults. So obviously, Andrew, you're focusing on getting the students at a young age, and that'll last all the way through that generation. But the older generations are picking it up from their kids too.
That I definitely think you learn a lot from teaching your kids as much as you do from going and trying to learn from others as well. So definitely something to keep in mind. We were talking about kind of different pieces of this issue. I heard you talk about, conserving water, getting people to come outside. It seems like when we try to address environmental issues, a lot of the times we're talking about issues in a silo. It's the water problem, it's the wind problem. But what are, I guess, some ways that we could be better about integrating in our solutions so that we're really looking at the whole system and coming together to try to address those things?
Well, one thought I have about this is, again, back to the education part of it. These are all interconnected, and nature, just as nature is interconnected. One big beef I have is that whenever we're talking about these issues, we talk about human beings standing outside of the problem. Like, what are we gonna do to fix it? But we're in it. We're not just causing some problem, we're part of nature. Just like, beavers change their environment and it makes these nice wetlands. We do things, some of them are negative, some of them are positive, but we are part of nature. There's an inexorable link connection to us, from the smallest insect to ourselves, and seeing us as part of it and as part of the solution as opposed to just a problem that we're causing these problems. I think there's been in the environmental movement, I've complained often that people are never really told anything they can do. They're never told that, you're told to recycle and maybe drive an electric car. There's not much you're told that you could do. And there's a program called Homegrown National Park. If people aren't familiar with that, you should be familiar with it. Dr. Doug Tallamay started it, and it gets people to look at their garden, whatever land they control, as part of a bigger system, and they're working to turn all these people's yards into gardens that are part of a national park, a homegrown national park, where they keep track of how many acres they've converted to wild acres by people's homes, individual homes. So projects like that actually make people feel like they're able to do something. You can't just scare people over and over. You have to give them something to do. And so any initiative the city can do that help make people feel like part of the solution, because they can be, because they're part of the whole system. They're not just separate from it.
And John, I know you work really closely with a lot of public officials in the city. So thinking about it from that perspective, what would you say?
Yeah, I really loved what Martha said there about recognizing that we're in it, we're not just bystanders toward it, and recognizing that all of us are here hopefully trying to solve these problems together, or have the interest in doing so. About a decade or so ago, I was the regional chair for the U.S. Green Building Council, their emerging professionals program, and we would go up to DC. We'd talk about how we could better incentivize green building, and folks would always look at me and be like, "You got Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas. Those people don't care about that," and would just sort of cast me off, and I just be quiet. But the reality is, all of us are a part of these problems. We can be a part of the solution. We need to make sure that we're extending the olive branch at every point that we can, and recognize folks are trying to do what they think is the right thing. They just might not have the right information. And you see that from a city level, trying to improve some of the developer standards. So the riparian initiative that was spearheaded by the real estate council, and the city is starting to implement that. They're improving their urban forestry. Yeah, we didn't really get to look at it. And I think folks forget that there are these opportunities to be providing some guidance to developers that they're trying to then generate the benefit for their development that then will have a net positive to the environment as well. We need to be opening the tent, not closing the door and assuming that some folks don't want to be in that work.
When I heard the question, I'm thinking, so water, soil, and green spaces, I'm thinking of the case study or an example is this PFAS stuff. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's polyfluoroalkyl substances. Sound like Teflon, pans and stuff like that, but you've probably seen the city is suing Department of Defense, DuPont, and 3M for $420 million right now because they were knowingly giving us, especially this firefighting foam. But anyways, the water has this PFAS stuff in it, the soil, so the water goes to the Village Creek wastewater treatment plant, and then all of the organic stuff is converted into sludge, and that sludge is sold as fertilizer. Well, that has been creating a huge problem in Johnson County near Cleburne, where they've had actually the cattle die and other animals, which is terrible. And then how it relates to the green spaces is that the drying beds there are a big birding spot. If anyone's a bird here, you've probably been there. But right now that's closed because of an oil spill in Arlington in May of this year. So that was what came to my brain when I was thinking about it. And as far as how we could help with the problem, I think, well, first of all, there's new legislation that cities have to be in compliance with parts per trillion for this PFAS stuff. So being able to test it, it's way different than being able to test like mercury or parts per billion. Parts per billion, I think of a great big fish tank with one of those great big orange goldfish with the bubbly eyes. You can just net them out, that's like parts per billion testing. Parts per trillion would be like a little tiny baby guppy in the gravel in the same tank. You have to invent a whole new system that like goes through and cleans it out. So I think one thing that we could do as a city and as a community is try and get one of these labs, invest in a lab where we can do this testing here. And not only that, but we could test for all the communities around. Currently, when we test for that, like Tarrant Region Water District gives permission to the city of Fort Worth, the city of Fort Worth gets it, then who knows who gives it to who, and then it goes to a place. It's just hard for me as a science person to be confident in that data when it's been through all these different people that I don't even tell. Whereas we as a city could be in charge of it, doing our own testing, and it's the right thing to do as well. But financially it would make sense too, because we could charge everyone to test the water.
And Andrew, just to clarify, so PFAs are what they call in the news forever chemicals. Is that an accurate name for what they are?
It is an accurate name. Luckily, a lot of that stuff goes downriver. If you're in a lake or a reservoir where it's not getting moved down, then it's an even bigger issue. But yeah, these are chemicals we're going to deal with forever. And the good news is they're not really that high in the river. I can tell you based on the animals I see in the river. But with the population growth, it's only going to get more and more and more. So we want to think ahead, plan ahead, and I think that's one way that we could do it.
I want to make a quick comment about something Andrew said because it was so good. Talking about how we could charge people to test their water supply. There's a notion that doing the right thing environmentally costs money, and it's just a cost center, and it never makes money. But there are opportunities in the chaos of climate change that doing the right thing doesn't have to be incompatible with making money. It doesn't have to be incompatible with business, right? And thinking of it in creative ways, how this might pay for itself by testing other people's water, and they'd be eager to have the testing done and keep up with it. is a perfect example of one of those kind of projects. Fort Worth loves to say that they like public-private partnerships to do things, and this is a perfect example of that. And I think for a long time, it's been this paradigm that that you just, you're either hugging a tree or you're making money. And there's like nothing in between. But there is. There are plenty of win-win projects you can do that make money too.
That's a great point. There's always that middle ground, and this is being recorded by my friend in the back, so I'll have to be delicate with this. But one of my sisters is an environmental toxicologist, and she works at one of the national labs. I'll keep it very vague. And she's one of those places that you ship your water to test to find those forever chemicals. And every once in a while, they have to just sort of check their testing equipment, making sure that they are in alignment with the proper standards. And so sometimes they'll send their data off, or their water, their samples, whatever, to a private lab and end up getting very different results than what they've been getting. So I agree with you. I think there's places for the private sector, but I also think of these great educational institutions we've got here in Tarrant County that could maybe be a good steward of that and would have perhaps a higher standard of care than what we may expect.
So I want to circle back to something that you were talking about, Martha, the idea of making all of this tangible and real for people that they feel like they can make a difference. Is there any one particular thing that you see people doing right now to immediately make a difference?
The fastest thing, they make a difference in their own home, in whatever property they control. First thing you could do is turn off lights at night, outside, right? I know people have security lights, but there's a way to have lights directed down and motion activated, and that would be the fastest thing you can do. And then in the fall, don't clean up too much. Don't rake all the leaves and put them in bags and get rid of them. Don't, the permaculture way of thinking is never let anything organic off of your property. Hold anything that's a life element on your property. If there's leaves falling there, you want them to stay there. If there's water coming in, you want to collect it. Whatever you need to do to keep these things on your property, that's what serves wildlife best. And, the world, and nature evolved in an atmosphere of darkness, and at night, it's supposed to be dark. So that was one thing that I did that made a huge difference in my garden. I had these lights on all the time. I thought, security, whatever, I'm going to have lights on. When I turned them off, the wildlife exploded in my back garden. And also, the other thing is stop calling your garden a yard, even the front one. Call it a garden. Yards are for prisons. Yards are for schoolyard bullies. Call it a garden, and you'll think about it as a garden. You'll treat it as a garden. Right? It's a garden. Please.
I think one of the things I want to mention on this is Streams and Valleys, the organization that I'm up here representing. So that was founded in the late 1960s by a group of concerned citizens here in Fort Worth that looked at the levee system, looked at the river, and had seen that it had become like this safe light. We weren't going to have the flooding from the 1929 flood, but it also was not seen as an amenity. And that was just a group of concerned citizens that banded together and have since ended up creating this river partnership between the city and TRWD, the Corps of Engineers, to create the first sort of master plans for a river system that have existed actually across the country. The Society of Environmental Toxicology and Chemistry came to Fort Worth last year, and they requested a session just for Fort Worth to talk about how the general citizenry was able to flip the script on understanding the importance of ecology and taking care of the river system. That could be anybody in this room. Would love for you to join Streams and Valleys, but there are also plenty of other initiatives that may be important to you that you would want to jump in on.
I joined Streams and Valleys this week. But along the light pollution thing, the other thing I wanted to add with that is migration. There's a lot of birds that migrate at night. The city of Fort Worth has a program, maybe it's not the city, but people walk around downtown and pick up dead birds and document all the ones that run into buildings and stuff. another great reason to turn your lights off at night. The health of the river, as John said, is really improved, and it's impressive. And that's where most of my research is because I'm right there at the river, I get to go out all the time. One of my favorite things to do is take students out there fishing. Not only will we catch the fish, but we also will take data on it and record what we find, usually through iNaturalist, which is a cool citizen science app that you can do, that everyone could do. But anyways, what you could do right now, in my opinion, is go pick up trash at the river. There's the trash bash coming up on 20th of September that TRWD puts on with other folks. And that's a great thing to do. You get a cool free t-shirt as well, and it makes you feel great about helping out the environment. You can also get some exercise. There's another cool app that TRWD recently told me about called the Rubbish app, where you take pictures. So with iNaturalist, I take a picture of the frog, I IDs it with AI, and I upload it. You can do this with the trash, does the same thing, but then there's a data set that you can bring back to the classroom. So you could take your students out or your family out, collect the trash, see what you found, and then you could look and see how much plastic was collected in your neighborhood or various other things. So I think those would be two fun ways to get involved ASAP.
So, sorry, gave me so much to think about, and she knows I'm a little bit ADHD, so when I hear something interesting, my brain kind of goes off in tangents, so try to come back to center. Thinking about everybody's work here with water specifically, what would you say is currently the biggest threat to our water systems, and what do you see as potentially the most impactful solution for that part?
I would say the threat, which just sounds ominous and bad, but it's just population growth. We're adding 63 people a day to Fort Worth. We're going to need a couple million gallons more water each year. And TRWD has done a great job with that. They've been forward thinking, and they need to continue. I think that they will, but it's a big problem. And the easiest way to save now, just like turning off your lights, turn off your faucet when you're not brushing your teeth. Now, conserving water is one of the major ways the Tarrant Region Water District and all water people hope to preserve and make it a more sustainable resource. So I think that's the biggest problem, and that's one way to help us solve those.
So I'm one of the environmental representatives on the Regional Water Planning Group. The Texas Water Development Board delegates water planning to all the various regions in the state of Texas. We create plans for our region, and then we send them down to Austin to be approved. And so this water planning goes out until 2080, I believe, was our horizon most recently. And there are projects that we're identifying in this water plan that were identified in the 1960s to be implemented today. We haven't had to implement them. Why is that? Because we've been focusing more on conservation. We've been focusing more on creative new water reclamation systems, so direct water reuse. Being innovative is an important way to avoid disturbing our natural habitats and limiting our own growth. And I hope that folks will take some time to kind of educate yourselves on how you can make your home more water sustainable, just as Martha was saying, xeriscaping is a great way.
You know, and xeriscaping doesn't mean a bunch of ugly rocks and gravel in your yard. It means native plants. It's native plants. They have roots that can go 14 feet down. They're channeling water into the ground and holding it in a way these non-native turf grasses that you all have in front of your homes are not doing, okay? Bermuda grass is not native to Texas. Bermuda, no. And it's not actually even from Bermuda, but that's a whole other point. But it's definitely not from here, okay? So you don't want it. You have to put chemicals on it because it's not native. You have to do all this stuff to keep it alive. And up to 60% of the water use in the summer is outdoor watering. Native plants, once they're established, do not need that level of water. They can live on natural rainfall events.
Brilliant.
Don't want to get about 5 minutes left here, so we'll wrap up with just sort of a final question of if you had to give advice to anybody in this room or to somebody watching, what is, again, the one thing that you would hope they take away from this panel? Wow.
The, the one thing that they take, you can make a difference without doing something hard. You can do something really easy to make a difference. That's the one point I want them to take away. The city has to encourage these practices, and I hope that the leaders, the future leaders of Fort Worth that are represented in the population of Steer Fort Worth, just keep environmental concerns top of mind with everything they do. No matter which department you're in at the city, no matter who you're interacting with, climate needs to be the first thing you're thinking of, and water conservation can definitely, from my point of view, start with your own property and move out from there.
So I was, I guess, listening to a book, say for an audiobook, lately by John Maxwell. And one of the things that he said that I really took to heart is that your perception is what you end up seeing in the world. So if you perceive that the world is on fire and everything's terrible and this is just a terrible existence, the world is going to be on fire. It's a terrible existence. It's a terrible place to be. Try to look out at your world and realize that we're all just trying to do the best that we can. We might not have the fullest set of information. If you have a piece of information that folks need to know, impart that to the world around you. Try to make this a better place and look at it as a place that seeks to thrive, seeks to improve. We're not all just trying to be jerks all the time.
I ran for public office recently. I ran for the Tarrant Regional Water District Board of Directors, and I lost. But it still was a great thing for me. The reason that I'm on this panel is because I ran for that. That's how my name got out there. So you can run for things, you can do things, and just because you don't win or something major doesn't happen, the connections that you build in the process can really help you out. So as future leaders, put your name out there, try things that might not always go as planned. It might not be fun sometimes, but in the end, that's how you're going to make those connections that will allow you to make a difference.
I love that point about thinking about how you can actually go out and make a difference as opposed to kind of waiting for the difference to happen to you. So I think we're going to go ahead and start transitioning now over to asking for some questions from the audience. So we have a few mics set up, and if you want to just come to the mic and ask a question.
I got a question. What gives y'all hope about the future of the climate?
What gives me hope is that nature is resilient. When you get out of her way, things fix themselves. They really do. In my garden, we moved into a house 2 years ago, and it's an old house and mostly been benignly taken care of. That means they didn't really do anything to it, so they didn't poison it. But there was one spot in my garden that was dead. And I mean a weed wouldn't grow it, right? Nothing would grow. And that scares me a lot more than weeds. Weeds are life. Weeds are plants that are resilient, right? There was nothing in this spot. And I looked at it and I'm like, why is nothing growing here? And then I figured out that they've been taking barbecue ashes and dumping them in one spot. So the remnants of the chemicals that they put on there to start the fire, it was dead. All I did was sprinkle some dried molasses on that spot. I started feeding it some dried molasses. You get it at a feed store, and watering it. And slowly the weeds started creeping in there. It started and first thing that comes up is an ugly, spiky weed, the kind of tough, nasty weed that would take to battle poison, right? But eventually nicer things grow in it. It's like, I'm always amazed at how fast nature recovers. Excuse me for personification, but she's fast. She comes back fast. It doesn't take much time. It's just a question of us not getting in the way of some of those repairs that happen. So that's my hope. The other hope is that programs like Homegrown National Park, I'm going to mention it again, Homegrown National Park, sign up for it. You feel like you're getting something done when you sign up for it, and this guy, Dr. Doug Talmay, he's written several books. One's called Bringing Nature Home, and he's an entomologist by trade. But his hopeful vision for how we can take control of our own environments and build a bigger environmental movement, it's really contagious. He's an excellent speaker. He just spoke here at the Botanic Gardens, actually. Our Native Hawaiian Society brought it in. It was really inspirational. So. Oh, very much simple. Table for one. All right, that's the only one with no.
But I think folks can also say that, hey, that was a really beautiful response. I don't have anything else to add. But I think the other thing that I contribute is, again, folks are here on a Saturday afternoon, and one of the panels is on climate. I think that there are current folks in power, there are current generations that are in power that may not have the same priorities that those in this room do. This is going to be the center of power in Fort Worth in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and that will have staying power. So I have optimism that some of the decisions that have been made in the past, there'll be plenty of opportunity to sort of reverse those, improve upon those, and nature's resilient. We'll be there at that time.
I have hope for nature, and I know nature is going to go on no matter what happens with humans. So it doesn't. We want it to stay the way it is. We don't want the climate change for selfish reasons. We want to be able to grow our food in the same places, get our water, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to keep climate change to its minimum for ourselves. The planet's going to move right on along without us. But I have a lot of hope based on the students that I see, the education system, even though it struggles. I think when the time comes and people put their brain to it and all of our power focused on it, we can come up with solutions really quick. I wish that time, and a lot of people would argue that time has already come, maybe already gone, but I think that we are going to be able to deal with a lot of these problems with new technologies. Who knows what AI has for the environment, you know? Maybe it will be able to provide some answers for us. But yes, I'm very hopeful, and I think Fort Worth is looking pretty good. We just have to make sure we keep doing what we're doing.
Okay, another question over here.
Yeah. So I love the panel, and my husband is the gardener more than I am, but I'd love to join him. I just don't know exactly what to do to help him. But Ms. Whitehouse, you've actually given me so many pointers to like him. We have a huge dead zone in our backyard. Actually, back garden. Yes, I love that. He actually has a real garden bed where he grows a lot of our vegetables. And it's different seasons, right, for different planting. But how do we fix that dead zone of grass that I'm sure it's good intentions, but he has different types of grasses because some wouldn't grow and then others, and then obviously weeds, and he really hates that, but I want to help him out and I want to provide the solution. So help me out.
Shade or sun?
It makes it both, so half and half.
You know, what I would always do is plant some native plants. So something like Turk's cap, it loves sun and shade, and it's resilient and it multiplies fast. And you'll get little birds and animals eat makes a little berry that they like to eat. I put something like that, like a mass planting of something. Weeds, I want people to look at weeds a little differently. Weeds are good. Think of it this way, there's a seed bank in the soil. There's all these weed seeds and other seeds of different plants in the soil. They get activated at different times based on conditions. So, you know, if you stir up the soil, different set of weeds will start growing. And that seed bank that's there, you have to respect it because nature puts up what is needed there. It's kind of like what I do when I see a weed is I just take it out and I put it right back. I put it upside down in there. Right. I'm giving back the nutrient. We're on a different time scale than nature. Nature's on a long time scale. We're on a short human time scale. Gardening is just speeding her up a little bit. That weed would grow, it would die, it would add itself back to the soil, a different kind of weed. My goal is grow a weed, grow a better weed, grow a prettier weed, grow a plant. They're all plants, but each successive generation you take, you're just speeding up those generations, putting the nutrition back in the soil that grows something you like. And when the soil's nice enough to grow something, it's like with ants, right? People have ants. Why do you have ants in your yard? Ants love compacted soil. If the soil is hard and crappy, you get ants. They are aerating the soil. They're doing you a favor. I don't get rid of them by poisoning them. I herd them along with the dry molasses again. You're going to hear dry molasses from me a lot. I give them some dry molasses. It heats up the soil a little. It heats up the microbes, in the soil, and they don't like that, and they move along. And they leave beautiful soil, aerated, fluffy, nice soil behind. So you got to look at the problems. Don't look at the problem. Look at the problem behind the problem always in a place like that, right? Always look at the problem behind the problem. If you have a bunch of snakes in your yard, you don't have a snake problem. You have a rat problem. They're not there for no reason. They're there because there's something to eat. So, each thing, there's something behind that thing. And that's the way to start thinking about permaculture gardening. You look at what's there, and then you put something there that's similar. Now, here's another hint. If you have a weed that looks like something, you find a plant you like that looks similar, it'll grow well there. That's been my experience. Don't ask me why.
What's an
but
example of that?
Well, for instance, there's this thing called, there's like a weed that's a false onion thing. It's a bulbing. It makes bulbs and it pops up everywhere. Sometimes it smells like onions, but it's not really an onion. Onions do well there, right? So when I replace one of those with a garlic or an onion, it does well there. I have no idea what's any scientific behind that, but weeds, what are weeds? They're just plants we don't like. We have cultivated weeds to turn them into other things, and they are related. If you know the Latin plant names for some of these weeds, you'll figure out what they're related to, and that's the other scientific way to do it. Just look for something in the same family, and put it in that spot.
And I think I heard,
iNaturalist helps you do that, by the way.
I was going to say, I think I heard some scientists on the panel say there is a scientific relationship.
Oh, thank you.
Well, when you think about it evolutionarily, when you see the same adaptations, whether it's a plant or an animal, it's for the same environment. So it makes sense that a plant that looks similar to another plant would thrive in the same environment because it has similar adaptations.
Yes, and there's a lot of cool Texas plants. You need to look for native plants because they do so well and they're so cool. We've got a plant. This is the most Texas plant ever. It's called the agarita. Agarita. It's got super sharp spines. It'll slice you to ribbons, but it also has a nice sweet fruit. Beautiful sweet fruit, even though it's slice you to ribbons. To get the fruit off of it, you gotta whack it with a stick. And when the fruit is ripe, you just hit, and boom, and you get this yummy fruit.
So it's like the piñata of plants.
It is the piñata of plants. It's a great security plant. If you don't want somebody coming through a window, they're not coming through an agarita. I can tell you that much. It's got a vicious, stabby. So lots of plants that are adapted to heat are stabby, right? So we've got a lot of those plants in Texas.
I had one question.
Wait, sorry. The schedule is always the enemy of great discussion. So, we have a break coming up, so if anyone's able to stick around, please go ask that. But give it another round of applause for our great